been a community volunteer. He's been a volunteer firefighter. He's got a whole host. He's a graduate of Penn State. He's a graduate of the Army War College. He's got more degrees than many of us have got. And now he's got the podium. So thank you for coming.
First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to come and spend some time and talk with you this evening. I always get asked, what do you want to be called? Somebody runs through that list of titles, and I tell people, look, what the title I'm most proud of is I'm an American soldier. And that's what I want to do. Because it's everything that I learned as a soldier that has made me successful as a physician, as a business owner, as a colonel, and as a congressman. And so I was asked to talk a little bit about leadership and the leaders that influenced me through the course of my career. And so I got that message first. I sat down and scribbled some notes. And then I saw a copy of the DVD sitting on my desk when I went back into the office, and I watched the DVD, and I was like, I really don't want to have to follow that DVD. But more importantly, I thought, that workshop, who actually was in my notes when I even saw the DVD, really summarized a lot of the points, and he just pointedly did, that I think all of us feel as are and have been leaders. All academy grads or hopefully future grads. So you're either leaders or future leaders of our community, of our nation. And so it's really difficult to talk to a group like this about leadership, because I'm sure there's many of you in this room that can give me a lesson on leadership. So I thought about what's the basic tenets of leadership, and General Fortcroft talked about a few of them. But I think the first is, what is the function of a leader? Because if you don't understand what the function of being a leader is, you certainly can't be a leader or talk about leadership. And so I think that the function of a leader is to produce more leaders, not more followers. I have a quote from John Quincy Adams who said that if your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. So the idea is not to be out there puffing your chest and beating on it, but it's being out there trying to mold people to become the future leaders of our country. Now, every day as a leader should be a learning experience. A lot of times learning how to lead. I'm sure you've all had the opportunity of seeing somebody who's a leader where you learn how not to lead. But every day as a leader is a learning experience. John McHenry said that leadership and learning are indispensable to each other. Another important point of leaders that they emphasize and find strengths. They don't dwell on weaknesses. You see far too often in military ranks, somebody wants to find what the weakness is of individuals and hound that person about their weakness. True leader looks at their strengths. They try to capitalize on those strengths as they build their organization, taking each person's strengths and putting them in that key position within their organization at whatever level, platoon, company, talent, but putting them in those key positions that will make your organization successful. I think if you look at how it applies to the business world, I'm thinking about quotes. Scott Pearl had a quote that said there's a difference between managing and leading. Inventories can be managed, but people must be led. And so again, there's a difference between being a manager and being a leader. Telling somebody what to do and trying to manage them, and leading them, and getting to do what you need for them to do, or what you want them to do, because they believe in you and they believe in the mission. I think there's three key areas for leadership. And General Short talked about one. So, making a decision. You can't be a leader if you're afraid to make a decision. And here, my two influences were retired Lieutenant General Harold Moore, but at the time as Lieutenant Colonel Harold Moore led the 1st Battalion, 7th Cavalry Regiment, 7th Infantry Division in Vietnam. The story that was highlighted in the movie That was a leader. A man who said, I will be the first one on the battlefield and I will be the last one on the battlefield. A leader who knew what needed to be done and led his troops to be successful in the battle of the Alumni Valley. He actually wrote it, when he became Lieutenant General, wrote a small little, we call now the PDU pocketbook, on leadership. And that book is always in my BDU cargo pocket. Because whenever I'm confronted with an issue of leadership, as I am now commander of brigade, I look into that book. Because it seems like there's always a pearl that I can find from Lieutenant General Harold Moore that I can apply to the situation that I find myself in. Teddy Roosevelt said that in any moment of decision, the best thing that you can do is the right thing. The next best thing is the wrong thing. And the worst is nothing. Being a leader is not about doing nothing. It's about always striving to do the right thing. And that leads to integrity. I think here, my model, and my influence with Abraham Lincoln. Doing what you're asking others to do, leading by example. To know what is right and not do it is the worst form of cowardice. And he didn't use it, but this is his quote, General Shortcut. The truth of the matter is that you always know the right thing to do. The hard part is doing it. And that comes down to having integrity. You cannot be a leader if you do not have integrity. You cannot expect others to do something that you yourself are unwilling to do. And the third, I think, to be a successful leader is humility. And here, I think, the consummate example is George Washington. It's about selflessness, not being selfish. You can't lift people up if you're more focused on lifting up yourself. And being a leader is about lifting other people up. You know, many years ago, a rider came across some soldiers who were trying to move a heavy log of wood without success. The corporal was standing by as the men struggled. The rider asked the corporal why he wasn't helping, and the corporal replied, I am the corporal. I give orders. The rider dismounted, went up and stood by the soldiers as they tried to lift the wood. He helped them. With his help, the task was carried out. The rider was George Washington, the commander-in-chief. He quietly mounted his horse, went to the corporal and said, the next time your men need help, send for the commander-in-chief. Humility. Humility averts those pitfalls of hubris, prejudice, and fanaticism. Humility is the harbinger of nobility and dignity. In true humility lies a fountain of inexhaustible strength and determination. I'm sure all those things are nothing that anyone here does not ascribe to, believe in, has practiced, and has passed on to others that follow in your footsteps. Whether it's during your military career, your follow-on career in business and industry, the things that we have learned that have been imparted to us through our military service is what makes us. It is the very fiber of our being. It is the core of who we are. Whether we're wearing dress blues, service uniform, BDUs, or civilian suit, everything that we do is guided and shaped by what we learned in boot camp, in our candidate school, and all the schoolings we ever went through to achieve whatever rank and position we achieved. And in being a leader now, taking that and extrapolating it to the situations that we find ourselves in every day. I'm an American soldier. I am a leader. And it's because of the United States Army that I have had the good fortune to be successful in the other things that I have done throughout my life. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and give you my thoughts on leadership. And I'll be happy to take any questions on almost any issue.
So how's the leadership in Congress?
As I said, I'd be happy to take Congress is lacking in leadership. Well, it's not Congress. Washington, D.C. is lacking in leadership. The entire swamp is lacking in leadership. You know, prior to actually still, but even more so prior to the last election, At no time since World War II were there fewer members of Congress that had ever worn the uniform of the United States military. No time since World War II, fewer members of Congress that had worn the uniform of the United States military. Now, we brought in a bunch of my first departments. Some retired, some still active in the reserve for National Guard. And we're trying to impart the type of leadership that we're more familiar with. But as you all know, that is like trying to push that log up the hill. I try not to be partisan, but our commander-in-chief can't help it. So, we're hoping that as we move forward, we'll start to see a little bit more leadership on many of the issues that we are currently facing.
Alumni said that nobody knows who the one is. Is there any light at the end of the tunnel on the partisanship and the bickering that seems to impede anything like, for example, where the what?
The question is on anything looking light at the end of the tunnel as far as the partisanship. Now, I often get asked, is it really as bad back there as it seems? And I'll tell you, from my perspective, it isn't. It isn't. You've got 10 or 15% over here making a whole lot of noise. You got 10 to 15% over here making a whole lot of noise. And then you got the other 70 to 80% right here trying to do what's right for our country. Problem is you don't hear about that 70 or 80%. Why not? Well, because the media's job is to sell advertising. And to sell advertising, you have to have ratings. And to have ratings, you have to generate controversy. The 70 to 80% right here, we don't generate controversy. So, it seems like everything is a partisan fight. I tell you, I've had 5 bills passed out of the House over bipartisan bills. Co-sponsors, the last one passed out by a vote of 410 to 3. There is bipartisan. But we need to harness it and start using it for a better purpose. And we need to stop being distracted by the 10 to 15 on a year and 10 to 15. Yes, wait a minute.
Obviously, you're addressing the military problem, and as you read the papers, the issue of sequestration comes up over and over again. The impact on military development, force structure itself, our capability to wage 2 wars, etc. I appreciate your comments. One, is that something we are going to resolve? And if not, what do you see as the real impact of sequestration on the U.S. military?
I believe it will be resolved. And it will be resolved because of the potential impact on the military and the ability to defend our nation in the economy. Not just from a national security perspective, but from an economic perspective. And so let's talk about it. So as it is right now, the defense is taking $487 billion in cuts over the next 10 years. That's already in the budget, already on the books. Department of Defense has come up, service chiefs, Secretary of Defense Panetta. It'll be tough, but we can do it. It'll mean an end strength, 80,000 left in the active Army, 20,000 left in the Marine Corps, but they say they can do it at 487. If sequestration kicks in, that's another $500 billion. We're looking at almost $1 trillion worth of cuts in the Defense Department over the course of 10 years. That is absolutely untenable. What that will do is give us the smallest army since World War II, the smallest navy since World War I, and the smallest tactical air force since the Air Force was created in 1948. That is an untenable position for the United States. So it has to be addressed. Like the Secretary of Defense has said, cuts of that magnitude will do real harm to our men and women in uniform, their families, and our military's ability to protect our nation, quote unquote. Okay? Now, and I like Secretary of Defense Panetta. I liked him when he was CIA director. In fact, the guy, he's a bipartisan guy, he was a budget guy, but he was the director of O&B under Clinton. If there's a guy who knows budgets and numbers, it's Secretary of Defense Panetta. And he's the one saying, wringing of hands and the gnashing of teeth of how we're not going to be able to sustain cuts of $1 trillion. And of course, you would expect that from the 4 stars, and that's why they're there. You don't get to be a service chief at a 4-star level if you were not politically astute. But what was interesting, I sit on the Armed Services Committee. We had a panel of economists come in, academic types, not military folks, but the academics. And we asked them, what would it do to the United States if we cut $1 trillion from the defense budget over 10 years? And every one of them, now being academics, they tend to lean a little bit to the liberal side. But every one of them said, you can guarantee an increase in national unemployment by 1 to 2%, because it will decimate the defense industrial base. And at this time of a very fledgling recovery from the recession that we were in, we will certainly plunge back into a much deeper recession if that much was cut from the Department of Defense. So it's not just national security, it's our economic security. And for those reasons, I believe sequestration will be addressed by the end of this year.
What your standard on future energy policy, because studying the wind production tax credit or including in the pipeline, where do you see American energy set?
Great question. Again, a question of where should American energy policy be going, and what kinds of programs are worthwhile, not worthwhile. We have to have an all-of-the-above energy policy in the United States. And all of the above means all of the above, not just all of the energy that comes from above the ground. It's got to be all energy. We've got to continue to develop our renewable energy, but it's not something that we're going to be able to flip the switch and all of a sudden power this place by solar, wind, and geothermal, which means we're going to have to exploit every one of our domestic resources, which include coal, natural gas, and oil. Also, I don't believe that the government should be in the business of picking winners and losers. There should be a level playing field and allow the market to decide what energy source is going to become the predominant energy source. I mean, we've got enough coal, natural gas to fuel our nation for over 100 years. Renewables should be able to get caught up by that, just as a natural progression. But when you look at picking winners and losers, Lincoln is pretty good at picking losers. Solyndra, Ammonex, Beacon. So while we have to embrace and develop the renewable sector, we can't turn our backs on the tried and true fossil fuels that have really built this nation. And so I support that all of the above policy, again, not just from economic security, but from national security. Most of our oil is coming from places that really don't like us much. And so we've got to make sure that we have the ability to utilize what we have here. I support Keystone Pipeline. I think that we already have a Keystone Pipeline. It runs from Calgary to Oklahoma. That's why this one's called Keystone XL, extra long. It runs from Calgary to Texas. Well, if we already have one that's never had an issue, what's the big deal about building another one that just goes a little bit further down to Texas? Just doesn't make sense. 10,000 direct jobs, easily 50 to 60,000 indirect jobs if that pipeline is approved. Follow up?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So the reason I asked you, I wanted to know the keys and I wanted you to characterize
Anyone else?
China is a big country with a lot of people and a lot of enthusiasm. What do you think is going to happen to this thing as far as economic is concerned and as far as military, potential confrontation?
I think, as you probably, this was probably more so than the average person on the street is aware of the recent change in our national military strategy and this new focus on Asia and the Pacific Rim. So that is the new area of focus, which kind of goes back to the question on sequestration, because the only way you're going to make that an area of focus is you have to have forward force projection, which means an increased reliance on the Navy and the Air Force, which means you need more boats and you need more planes. And that isn't going to happen if you have sequestration. So this whole idea of this disconnect between our new national military strategy and where we're trying to go with budgets will wind up giving us another hollowed out military strategy. But back to the question, that editorial. I don't think, certainly in my lifetime, or even my son's lifetime, will we see ourselves engaged in a force-on-force war with China. It will be a battle of economics. The reason why we're shifting our strategy to the Asia-Pacific Rim is not because of the military threat, it's because of the economic threat. We have to make sure that we are there, forward-projecting power, ensuring the ability to trade. 60-70% of the world's trade passes through the South China Sea. We cannot allow any country to control the South China Sea and have the ability to block access to trade. Where I think it's the relevant side. We are getting pinged by the 3rd PLA, the People's Liberation Army, the 3rd PLA, which is their cyber division. They're pinging us millions of times a day. And they're trying to not just get intellectual property, they're trying to get into our defense contractors to see what the next greatest weapon system is that we're developing. They're trying to get access to our critical infrastructure. They're trying to get access to our financial institutions. That is how they're going to be able, if they're successful, to wage a war on the United States. So that's our greatest concern.
What about the growth of the number of bureaucrats that are in Washington, D.C., especially that they've had such a tremendous increase in the number of SES ranks in the civil services? Anybody care about that?
Well, we certainly care, because you notice as unemployment has bounced across the bottom, it really hasn't gone anywhere. The one area of marked increase in jobs is in government jobs. Much of it, the folks that are inside the building. And that's why, when we look at trying to budget, and the House has passed it. Can't get the Senate to pass on. And we're now over 3 years since the Senate passed it. We are trying to rein those positions in. We've got a downsized government. We cannot, at a $16 trillion debt load, and an over $1 trillion deficit for every year in the last 4 years, latest projections, this fiscal year, $1 trillion deficit. It is just truly unsustainable. And so you've got to look at reining in the growth of the federal government, just like the state and municipal governments have had to do the same thing during this last recession. We've seen state and local governments slash positions. Federal government's not you.
Governor General Quinn brought out yesterday, thought that state of Illinois is going to have to do with federal government fund their state pensions. I hope that the Congress will do whatever it can to squash that idea immediately.
The statement was that the governor of Illinois has mentioned that they're going to have to go to the federal government to bail out their state pension program. The days of bailouts are over. Okay, the days of bailouts are over. This is the whole too big to fail. They're over. I mean, that's what the first stimulus package was. Kick the can down the road and then pick it up and have to make hard decisions. It passed in 2008 by giving them federal money to fill in the hole of their budgets. The federal government can't do it. Because the way we fill in our $16 trillion holes, we've got to go down the block and start printing more money. Or we got to go borrow more from China. It's unsustainable. And it's not about us. It's not about us in this room. It's about our kids and our grandkids. They're the ones that are going to be paying off this debt over the next several generations. But we won't. We're not going to be around to really suffer the consequences of the decisions being made right now. But our kids and grandkids will be. And that's got to be the driving force behind the decisions being made in Washington.
Just one of the downsides of government, and we worried about a lot of that during this election season. What is the mechanism whereby you might accomplish that? How do you practically do that?
Well, I'm going to give you a quick federal budget 101. Okay? So we'll split the pie into bits. 20% of the budget is discretionary spending. It's called discretionary spending. That's the money that funds all the cabinet aid, that's basically the money that funds government. Okay? Another 20% is discretionary but defense, so defense security spending. The other 60%, or 3/5, is made up of four things: interest on our debt, Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. And that stuff is called mandatory spending. We can't go in there and cut that because it's the way the programs are written that that money is automatically spent unless you go in and by law change the program. So we're stuck with these other two bits of the pie to work with right now. So let's talk about that discretionary spending, that 20%. I could turn off all the lights, lock all the doors, send everybody home from Washington, close every cabinet level agency. Everybody, they're gone. That's not enough money to cover 1 year's worth of deficits. It's only about $1.2 trillion. So then you have to go into that other 20%, defense and security. We just talked about that, what that would do if we make bigger cuts there. That means you gotta have the political will to go into the 60%. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. That is the only way that we're going to start to get our debt under control. We have a fight, believe it or not, we actually have decreased discretionary spending each year for the last 2 years. Each year, year over year, we decreased discretionary spending. Now, discretionary spending, I mentioned about $1.2 trillion. Now, how much we decreased it? $100 billion. And that was a fight to get that $100 billion. It's the mindset of Washington. It's that mindset of, oh, we're all in government service, right? You're coming up at the end of the fiscal year, better spend it or you won't get it back next year. You gotta change the mindset. You gotta change the culture. I know you. I mean, I drive my staff, brigade commander in the reserves. My staff called me at the beginning of September. Sir, we got $750,000 left in our budget. I have a $5 million budget for my brigade. We got $750,000 left in our budget. If we don't spend it within 2 weeks, higher headquarters is going to pull it back. What are we buying? I said, we'll let higher headquarters pull it back. If we needed to buy something, we wouldn't want to buy now. But that's not the mindset. Until we change it, we're going to have a hell of a time trying to make inroads in bringing in government in Washington.
Wasn't so much interested in the dollar. You just talk about the gross number of people populating the government. The downside to government, you've got to get rid of people.
Well, but as it's a chicken and the egg phenomenon, right? You can get rid of people and bring down spending, or you can bring down spending and get rid of people. Either way. And in the bills that we've passed, we've had freezes on hiring. We put in a 1 to 3 rehire rate. So you got to after you get rid of 3 people, we'll allow you to hire one back. So we've got things that we're trying to put into place to slow the rate of growth and actually start taking some steps backwards and getting rid of folks on the payroll. But when you go to an agency and say, okay, your budget is being cut by 10%, which is what will happen as a customer, every line is cut by 10%, they're going to have to go in and say, well, that means I got to cut these positions. And you're going to start breaking down people on payroll.
It seems to be one of the big opportunities there is the post office, although it's a quasi-government organization. And with the way technology is changing, they ship a lot of junk mail. What are your thoughts on the postal service?
That's what I like.
Sorry. That's one of those.
We don't get it. I think it's amazing how much people are unwilling to make any changes to their place. It's just that phenomenon, they're not in my backyard. It's okay, just don't do it to mine. Right? So you talk about, look, if we get rid of Saturday delivery, the amount of money that saves, you're like, oh, I gotta have my mail on Saturday. Like, why? It's not going out till Monday. What are you gonna do? You know, to talk about closing some of the underutilized rural post office. Oh, you can't do that because that's like the community center. You know, everybody goes to the rural post office on the weekends, and that's, you know, where they have a hoedown or whatever. Well, you know, that's not the purpose of the post office, to be the community center. But these are the arguments that Darrell Ison, a representative from California, who sits on the government oversight, administration oversight chair, these are the things that he's been trying to talk about. And every one of the ideas that come up somehow get totally knocked off the plate because of these types of arguments. I think it's going to become, it's going to go the way of anarchy. These increasing government subsidies. You see, how quickly has the cost of postage gone up over the last couple of years. Before it used to be, once a blue moon, postage went up by a couple pennies. Now it goes up so often they got to make more mistakes. So it is a tough issue. But we've got to make the post office run more like not a quasi-governmental agency, but as a free market business. Because if that was the case, they would be stopping Saturday delivery. They would be looking at how they would close down underutilized post offices. We could probably contract the entire postal service out to FedEx and save money. But until we get past that, this is the Constitution. Post office actually one of the requirements of the Congress is to establish post offices and post roads. So that's what people yell at us. What are you doing on the floor naming post offices? It's one of the few things we actually do that we're required to do by the Constitution. Name a post office. But until we make those changes, we're going to continue to see our postage go up. Yes, ma'am.
I have always failed to understand why the U.S. Post Office doesn't refuse junk mail. It's cumbersome, it's just extra baggage for their mail carriers, which on many times in my area anyway do 2 routes every day. But let them take their junk mail to the Review Journal.
But it
Let
pays
them
the bills.
have an insert.
It pays because it's what pays the bills. If they got rid of junk mail and bulk pre-sorted mail, the post office would be in an even bigger mess than they are now. So that's one of the few things that's helping them stay afloat. One more. Yes, sir.
Oh, good.
All right, 2 more. 1 and 2. There's the left hand that went up.
You follow politics before you went to law.
Example? Yes.
I lived in Washington for 4 years during the early Reagan administration. It seemed to me that things people got along a little better. But surely, after being there now for a little bit, you had a few surprises, like maybe 1, maybe 2, maybe 3. You never imagined would be something that you would learn as a congressman. Can you share those with us? I mean, some things that really surprised you about your job, about Washington, about what's really wrong, how to fix, whatever. Well, I'd like to hear something about your personal experience.
Okay. The first thing, and I'm going to use a quick story here of a friend of mine who said this when he first went to Washington. I thought he was saying it as a joke when I went. And this was at the time of the Surgeon General Richard Clark. And he tells the story when he first got to Washington as a Surgeon General. He saw the congressman from his state, Arizona, walking in the hall. So, Rich, how are you doing? You get situated. Yeah, I love it here. Everything's going well. I can't wait. And the congressman, Rich, okay, Rich said, I'm making a lot of friends. Congressman, Rich, let me tell you something. When you come to Washington, you want a friend, you got to get 2 dogs. Because by the time you leave here, one of your dogs will come. When he told that story, and I thought it was a joke. He's right. I had jokes with that piece, so I like it. Sometimes I was back in Iraq. I felt safer there. At least I had a general idea of which direction the fire is coming from. But overall, I think, it's been a great experience. It really has. I think it is what you make of it. It's like any job. There's good days and bad days. You hope there's more good than bad. As long as there's more good than bad, you want to keep doing it. So far for me, there's been more good than bad. You mentioned like some of the partisanship that goes on now compared to when you were there during the Reagan years. It's interesting because when you first get elected, you go back like the second week after the election, that November 2010. We do this orientation program, Congress, Introduction to Congress. And so we had some of the called the more mature members, come on and talk to us about what it's like to be a member of Congress. And they even said, things are getting more and more partisan. And they said, well, we think it's because nobody brings their family to Washington. Because you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. If you bring your family to Washington, all of a sudden now you're a Washington insider. You abandon your district and become one of them. But in our day, when we first got elected, everybody brought their families, we were all friends. Didn't matter far. Wives went to lunch together, kids played on the same soccer team. There was camaraderie outside the building. And so, yeah, we may have our disagreements on the floor on a piece of legislation or on an issue, but we would disagree without being disagreeable. Because we know when we went home, if we were disagreeable, our wives would give us heck. Because I was just beating up on her friend's husband. But that doesn't happen. And they feel that that's one of the biggest reasons why things seem to be so polarized. Is that there's just no free war amongst members of Congress. So, other than that, I really haven't been that surprised. It takes a lot to surprise me. I went in eyes wide open. Now we go Bill to the last one.
Yes, sir. Can you tell us what really happened in the Middle East and what's going on there now?
I can get the sanitizer. I also get on the house. I can't remember what story I'm allowed to tell. Okay, so look. Let me start off by saying, I find it very unfortunate that both sides of the aisle try to make political hay out of this. I thought it was disgusting. And I've been asked by many folks, what do you think? What do you think about that? What do you think the president did wrong? What do you think about Mitt Romney's comment? Let's keep our eye on the bigger picture. 4 American public servants lost their lives. One of whom was newly moved to Henderson, my district, was 3 miles from my house, who had a 3-month-old baby. I refuse to denigrate their service or sully their memory by making this issue political. What happened in Gaza? It was a spontaneous protest at the beginning. It was a copycat protest off what happened in Cairo. And if you look at the timeline, the event started, the protest started to taper down. Then there was the attack on the consulate. About 4 to 5 hours after the protest started is when the heavy weapons fire on the consulate began. So it was a planned attack. The question that remains unanswered is was it a planned attack from that time of day? Or was it a planned attack that was on the shelf for a future date and they saw a window of opportunity based on the protest and decided to move up their timeline? That question we have nobody's answered yet. But it was definitely planned. We just don't know if it was planned for that date and time. So there's the attack on the consulate, which kills the ambassador and the public affairs person. There's an annex about a mile down the road. So folks from the consulate are evacuated to the annex while the consulate's under attack. So of course the attackers see where the folks are going. They come back in a greater force to attack the annex. And that's where we lost the 2 former Navy SEALs that were providing contract security. So yes, it was an organized force. We believe that it was Ansar al-Sharia, a loosely affiliated Al-Qaeda affiliate. Many of you may have seen the pictures that are put up on the internet right away claiming that Ambassador Hu was fired and being thrust to the streets and he was tortured. That's absolutely false. Absolutely false. Those are pictures of Libyan Good Samaritans who found them in the consulate and were trying to get them to the hospital. A little piece of that political spin that certain folks are trying to make. That's not true. From the best of our knowledge, he was alive, not like you and I, but he was breathing at the time he was found, but he expired at the hospital. So that's what happened. Issues about whether or not there was intel, did they know there was an impending attack? There was no credible press release about the attack. There was information 24 hours prior to the incident in Cairo that there was some stuff floating on social media about this video. So that was the initial, there was no warning order put out, but there was a communique to the consulate, to the embassy in Egypt, to alert them to the fact that there was some social media chatter regarding the video, just to kind of, increase, econ in the area. But there was no credible press release or anything. Again, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. Thank you all for your prior service. Whether you wore the uniform or you were a spouse who served and sacrificed, more so than the person in the uniform, God bless all of us who have served. Keep our families safe. Thank you.
Somewhere for helping out. Jenny Huff for helping out, and Bob Stein for helping out. Thank you all very much for coming.
Good luck, job hunting. Wish I could give you a call today, but not out like
Okay, thank you, I appreciate it.